Observing the mind without judgment is the perfect method to separate from it and free yourself from pain. Once you realize that your mind is causing pain, preventing you from truly living in the present, you want to detach yourself from it. How? To distinguish yourself from your mind, you must become fully aware of it and its control over you. Otherwise, you will never know the countless small and subtle ways it influences your thinking and behavior, and therefore your happiness. For instance, if you want to observe your mind, ask yourself, what will my next thought be? If you concentrate fully on that question, you will see that it takes a while before the next clear thought arrives. Through observing, you have managed to create a gap in the stream of thinking. If you do this often, you'll start to notice how much are you usually occupied by the constant flow of thoughts in your mind. By doing this, you will have found the primary tool for interrupting your mind and separating from it. For instance, if in the middle of your work you feel like running, follow that urge of the body. Your body knows what's right for you, so go outside and run. Then, listen to the small nagging voice inside your head that says, right now, you should be working rather than running or wasting time. But do not judge that voice as bad or good, and do not try to follow the advice. Just smile and accept that it exists. By doing this, you learn how to notice your mind without having to follow it to where it is trying to lead you. Try and exist in a state of permanent alertness. As you get better at separating yourself from your mind, you can try embracing another technique, active waiting. It is a particular type of waiting state, like when you are aware that something serious or significant could happen at any moment. In this state, all your attention is focused on the now. When you get into a state of active waiting, there is no time for the daydreaming, planning, or recalling that usually distracts us from the present. For instance, while taking an exam, you should waste no time worrying about the outcome, but rather remain fully present and pay close attention to the job before you. Entering into a state of active waiting shortly before and during the examination can enable you to achieve that. While in this condition, you also listen to your body because it must be ready for anything to happen. As we have already seen, this focus on the body is also very crucial to living in the present. For example, Zen masters used to sneak up to their students who had their eyes closed and then try to hit the waiting student. The waiting forced the students to focus on their bodies entirely. Thus they could sense the approaching masters and prevent their attack. Many religious teachers advocated this state of waiting for their students because they thought it would result in a beautiful life. For instance, when Jesus was asked by his disciples what they need to do to live a good and peaceful life, he advised, "Be like a servant waiting for the return of the master." Since the servant does not know at what hour the master will come, he is in a permanently alert condition. He does not make plans for the future and is always aware of his environment to be sure he does not miss the master. Living in the present can be difficult for your partner, but it may also enhance your relationship. After following the previous steps, you are now able to live in the present, and therefore are no longer dependent on your mind. But how will this change your daily routines? For example, your relationship. It is challenging for a normal person to share their life with someone who lives entirely in the present. The ego of the non-present person feeds on issues, while the man who's present, calm, and at peace becomes a threat. The non-present individual's ego reacts by creating additional problems. For example, to insult the other person, debating a trivial issue to interrupt the peace, or always refer to previous incidents. Why would they do this? It gets answered with an analogy. Just as the darkness can't survive close to the light, it's hard for a person controlled by the ego to be near a person living in the present for long. Strong opposites can't exist in close proximity. If you put a candle in the darkness disappears. If you put water on the fire, the flame extinguishes. But if done correctly, living in the present can also greatly enhance your relationship. You will have the ability to stop judging, criticizing, or seeking to change your spouse and instead see them as an independent individual. Moreover, the insight you gain by living in the present can be used to disrupt otherwise endless cycles, like debates that never conclude. The inner peace will allow you to hear your spouse without judging. Not all pain can be avoided. Surrendering to the present doesn't mean ignoring sad or hurtful feelings. Even if you live entirely in the present, some feelings of sadness and pain are inevitable. But what should you do with them? Just pretend that everything is okay? That does not sound like an excellent idea. While it's true that most of the pain is self-created, that does not mean we create it all. An excellent example of an inevitable pain is that inflicted on you by those people who are still controlled by their destructive thoughts. Another example is the passing of a loved one. As you can't lead everyone around you to enlightenment, and you certainly can't put a stop to death, this pain is unavoidable. So what could be done? When you experience something painful, which causes you real pain, you may take it for what it is. For instance, if you lose a loved one, you may, of course, mourn and feel sad. But if you're in a position to accept this as something that is as it is and can't be changed, then you will avoid unnecessary suffering. Being sad is a natural feeling, something you do not need to feel guilty or ashamed about. Things are as they are. It means that you don't waste your time continually wishing that things were different. By being present, you will avoid most of the pain in your life, but not all. Living in the present does not necessarily mean ignoring or suppressing pain. Instead, it offers you the inner strength to accept such difficult and painful facts of life. Surrendering to the present doesn't mean living a passive life. Inner peace is a great thing to own. But when your outer life situation is unfortunate, inner peace isn't worth very much. Does accepting the present mean living in a passive life in which you're not conscious of or trying to change anything that troubles you? Not necessarily. Living in the present is an internal process of feeling and insight. It does not mean you have to create a passive external behavior. For instance, if you are stuck in the mud, you do not just tell yourself that you always wanted to be held in the sand. Instead, you could try, without panicking, to free yourself from it. Living in the present can also provide you with new tools and new techniques to solve problems. It is undoubtedly true that living in the now can bring you new kinds of determination and strength. You don't waste your internal resources creating problems. In reality, by living in the present, you truly see no problems, just individual, manageable situations which you may fix one by one. It makes you a whole lot more effective. Living and accepting the present doesn't mean you commit to a passive life, or that you decide not to even try to change your situations for the better. Instead, by focusing on the present and keeping the future and past in place, you're more able to see whatever is wrong at any given time, and you have the power to change those things for the better. Summary: don't focus on the past or the future. Instead, live in the present and try to separate yourself from the overthinking mind. Following this method will lessen your suffering and enhance your life. The questions these videos answered: how do I make my life simpler? By focusing only on the present and ignoring the future or past, you can enhance your life. Part of you needs the pain to survive, and it creates most of the pain you experience. What's the link between mind and suffering? The ego is a component of your mind that prevents you from being happy. If you need a more productive and virtually painless life, separate yourself from your mind and focus on your body. Observing the mind without judgment is the perfect method to separate from it and thus free yourself from pain. Try to exist in a constant alertness state. What impact will this have on my life? Living in the present can be difficult for your spouse, but it may also improve your relationship. Not all pain can be avoided. Surrendering to the present doesn't mean ignoring sad or hurtful feelings. Surrendering to the present doesn't mean living a passive life.